Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to this Region 12 Board of Education meeting, December 5, 2016. Rebecca, can you take attendance, please?
Anthony Amato. Here. Valerie Anderson. Alan Brown.
Here.
Gregory Cava. Here. Rebecca Devine, I'm here. Michelle Gora. Here. James Hirschfield.
Here.
Stephanie Kolnick. Jennifer Pody. Here. Lisa Rausch. Here. Michael Sinatra. Here. Peter Tagley.
Okay, thank you. Everyone is here except Stephanie. Opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board? All right, seeing no one, I'll move on. Alan?
I'd like to, if we could make a motion and I'd like to vote to add an agenda item, the image at the agenda. I'd like to talk about and maybe move on requesting that our financial plan be developed for the next meeting as opposed to in January. And we can talk about why. I mean, I don't want to take up time talking about it now if we can get it on the agenda. But obviously, if we get it on the agenda, we can talk about it then, and we can vote yes or no then.
All right, well, there's a motion to amend the agenda to add an item. I would suggest new business, item 8.4, about the timing of the business plan. Is there a second to that motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, what?
I'm sorry, is the business plan for the meeting on December 19th or January 19th?
Well, we have it scheduled, I believe, for January 19th or whatever it is, January 13th, sometime in January. January 9th. And I wanted to move it up to the 19th to have it done by then of December so that we would have more time to digest it before the big forum on the 9th. But as I said, we can talk about it on the agenda as opposed to now.
The issue before us is whether we amend the agenda, not whether this thing
Okay.
passes. What, Peter, do you understand what he's asking?
He's asking to amend the agenda, but my issue is not amending the agenda, but when you're talking about finance, I'm not sure I'm grasping the issue.
At the last meeting, the superintendent said she would use her best efforts to have a business plan available for the board for a meeting in January, I
Okay,
think
and you
January
wanna move
9th.
that. So you want to move
Alan is asking to amend today's agenda to have a discussion about moving that date up to a date this month in December.
Got it. I got
That's the motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of amending the agenda, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, one opposed. All right, the motion passes. So we'll add that as item 8.4. All right, consent agenda, item 3, which consists of meeting minutes of our business meeting November 7, our education meeting November 14, and our special meeting November 28. Does anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda? The minutes were part of your packet. All right, not hearing anyone, then the consent agenda is approved. Report of the chair. I just want to remind folks that the high school concert is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock here. That includes our chorus, band, and strings programs. And then the middle school concert is during the bazaar on Thursday night, this Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Again, the middle school chorus, band, and strings. So hopefully you can make an effort to attend those, including the bazaar. I'm sure people would love to see members of the board. All right, item 5, superintendent's report. Dr. Costantino?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Couple of just announcements also. Tomorrow I'm going to the Capitol with the high school team, and we're going to participate in the high school redesign project with 20 other schools in Connecticut and the legislature. Very, very excited about that. And our school is presenting on having virtual school on snow days. So we're very excited about that. So we'll see what happens. So we'll see what happens. It's just a thought. Yes. Tomorrow. Yeah. We have, who's coming with us? Brianna Getzel and, the young man, it's not Marty. Jack Roush. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize. Jack Roush. I get them mixed up. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, and they're fabulous. Let me tell you, they are spot on. We're going to have the best kids up there. Lori, Karen Files, and myself. On Wednesday, there's a legislative breakfast in Litchfield at 7:30 a.m., and that's at Ed Advance. And on Friday, there's a legislative breakfast at Sandy Hook at 7:30 a.m., and I'll be going to that. So if you're interested, you can really show up. Although they'd like you to register, people just come if they can fit it in. So please feel free to do so. I want to let you know that we did solidify our board retreat on March 13th, and Patrice McCarthy will be coming, and she is from CABE, and she'll be doing roles and responsibilities of Board of Education and superintendents. So I think she's really wonderful. And tonight we have a little presentation, and although it's not an education meeting, Mrs. Youngblood just got back from her trip in the Persian Gulf on Teach 2016, and I'm happy to say that Wendy is a really creative, innovative teacher. She's in the doctoral program at WestConn, so I'm very excited about that. And she's a wonderful teacher. She takes the kids to Barnard and does a lot of work in history and women's studies and social studies. And so we've given her 10 minutes tonight to share her trip. I didn't want her to wait till January because she may have forgotten some wonderful details. So Wendy, the floor is yours.
If you need more than 10 minutes, you've got it. No, Wendy, you're not on a strict time schedule. Take all your time you need.
No, I have to pick up my daughter.
Oh.
Or else. You guys. She's 11, so she's very, very grouchy. I'm not sure this is it on? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the work that you do. There's probably something good on TV tonight. And even though you don't hear it from us very often, we appreciate what you give of yourselves for the entire community here. So thank you very much. Dr. Costantino, this is the first I've heard of the snow day situation. So I suggest you pilot it by giving us all the day off one day next week, and we'll let you know how it goes. You can gather some data, and yeah.
I have penciled in Thursday, December 15th as a snow day, just so you know. my pajamas are on backwards. My pajamas are inside out, and the spoon is under my pillow.
How does that? That's exactly what the people in my household do. That's crazy. Okay. It also occurs to me that you guys are not always aware of some of the really cool stuff that kids and faculty do. I've participated in a number of, I don't know what to call them, professional development experiences in the summer, but I haven't had the chance to come here and talk to you about them. So this is a pretty special experience for me, and I hope will give you some insight on some of the richness that educators bring to the entire school community. And if you haven't yet had a date, they're from the Emirates. I bought them myself in Abu Dhabi. Please have them because,
Very good.
yeah, they'll send your glucose levels high. So anyway, I want to tell you about the Teach Fellowship. I was really excited to be awarded a position in it this year. I think we were the 9th cohort from the United States to travel to the Gulf with this program. We were sponsored by the U.S. Arab Bilateral Chamber of Commerce. Whoops. All right, I'll tell you a little bit about the chamber. So we're sponsored by the U.S. Arab Bilateral Chamber of Commerce, which was founded in Houston, and most of the work that it does is in establishing trade commissions and trying to promote mutually beneficial political and business, I mean, I say political, small p, political and business arrangements between American companies and folks in the Gulf. And henceforth, I may refer to the Gulf as the GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperative something. It's on like slide 4. I think there were well over 100 people applied. There were 30 finalists, and I was the only person from Connecticut and one of the only ones from New England to be accepted. So I was pretty stoked. This is called the Teach Fellowship, and it stands for, well, as you can see, Teachers Educating Across Cultures in Harmony, which is a little cheesy, but still what we're doing. I think that the Bilateral Chamber is looking to grow this dimension of its work in the GCC, and I think you'll be able to understand why in a couple more slides. I don't know how good your vision is. If I were sitting where you are, I would not be able to read these things. But the main goals are for the GCC to pay for us to go and for the chamber to do all this work on our behalf. our efforts to advance STEM education in the United States and in the Gulf, to expand awareness of the incredible array of achievements in Gulf countries, particularly for Americans, to hook up classroom to classroom or ministry to teacher, ministry to classroom partnerships, and then to challenge stereotypes of Muslims for Americans. And I think we can understand why this is so very important right now. Okay, so just as a reminder, this is where, this is the GCC area, the Gulf Cooperation Council. It includes all these countries that are here colored. Okay, this was our itinerary. We flew into Qatar. Oh, yeah. And then we took a quick hop to Bahrain. Bahrain is actually connected by, I think it's a 17-mile causeway to Saudi Arabia. And then we flew to Dubai and then Abu Dhabi. And then we finished up in Doha, Qatar. And just so you know, it can be pronounced Qatar or Qatar. We heard it both ways. Okay, so 3 new things that I learned, and the list could be long, but I'll spare you. Folks in the Gulf are forward-thinking. They're not dumb. They know that their fortunes have been made off non-renewables, extractables, and they know that that is limited. So they're really, really looking to transition to a knowledge-based economy. They have something in common with us. It is imperative that you become a hub of innovative learning. That's how we feel. I mean, Shepaug, the Shepaug community, and that's how folks in the Gulf feel too. They need to transition, to pivot toward a sustainable, I guess, amalgam of resources, and that would be in knowledge-based economies, in tech, in innovation. I mean, tourism and travel are both high priorities economically for them, but those may not endure the way that the knowledge-based economies would. These countries are, well, they're very climate savvy. I mean, they're peninsulas. They've been desalinating their water and reclaiming land for decades. They know what's up, and they are really looking for ways to not only protect themselves from climate change, but also to grow their economies. These countries are a little bit younger than I am. The Emirates is celebrating 45 years, I think, this year. And so that has really been exciting, but a bit tumultuous for them. The way that they've navigated it has been pretty admirable. Planned urbanization, planned expansion. It's a very interesting study in urban development. If you're at all interested in architecture, going on to Google Images and looking at the Dubai skyline, but like individual buildings up close. Or to the Doha, the capital of Qatar, to their skyline. It's really remarkable. It makes Manhattan look rather dowdy, and I had never thought that before. It's actually really great for some of our architectural drawing classes. It could be wonderful models. In fact, Donna Wright, the art teacher, came up to me today and said, I'm giving kids options for drawing projects, and I've never had kids pick buildings from the Middle East before, and now they're doing it. And the kids she was telling me about, they have siblings in my 8th grade English class. So kids are talking about this at home. So they also, in these countries, have really big civic challenges. To make a long story short, they have a great amount of expat labor. And I had always thought of expats as being like economists from Switzerland. But these are construction workers from Nepal and Bangladesh, and nannies from the Philippines, and hotel workers from Somalia and Sudan and Djibouti. So in the nation of Qatar, for example, their population is somewhere between 2.3 and 2.8 million people. It's hard to pin down exactly. There are 225,000 Qatari people. So exactly, that's the face I made. They are about 10% of the population. So in some ways, it's a win-win-win. People in Nepal can't get high-paying construction jobs. They can in Qatar or Dubai or Abu Dhabi. And we saw on Thursday, their Thursday night is sort of like our Friday night. It's the end of the work week. We saw lines and lines of adult men outside of Western Union remitting their money home. It's a new model of global economy. Well, maybe not that new, but on this larger scale, it's really something. The issue for the people that we met, at least in the ministries, is how do you grow, for those folks who have families in country, how do you absorb them into the educational system, yet still differentiate between citizens who are accorded financial benefits as citizens and then the rest of the population, you know? So they have a lot of civic challenges. It's really interesting. This is not the time to like lay it all out. I just wanted to let you know that I had never considered some of these things in quite this degree. I came back and said to Matthew Marchese, oh my gosh, you've got to go there. You're going to love it. If you guys don't know Matthew, he's really into, he's a senior. He's really into this sort of stuff. Okay. I wanted to draw your attention to how I had used Schoology, the new learning management system. I set up it doesn't matter that you can't read the little tiny font here. I set up a special group and a page with options for kids to hook into my travel to follow along. There was all kinds of like, here's Wolfram Alpha, you know, demographic information. Here are videos, here are maps. Here's my itinerary. I used a calendar to set up Google Hangout times with Brandy Doherty, an 8th grade teacher. So we were able to do a couple of like, real-time chats with the kids. That was pretty neat. I set up student challenge questions. One of them was like, you know, Google search something cool for me to do in Dubai and post a picture, tell me what I should look for, and give me one reason why I should do that. So I don't know if you can see, but, you know, 75 kids and 77 kids responded, which is interesting because I have 62 8th graders. Actually, yeah, so that means that some of their friends were on too. So that's pretty neat. At the farewell dinner in Bahrain, I was sitting next to this 22-year-old kid who had participated in junior achievement with one of our sponsoring organizations. And we're sitting there talking. I'm telling him about the student questions. I'm looking, we're talking about it, and he's like, well, what are they asking? So I pull it up on my phone, and Claire Buckley asks, how do they start each school day? Do they start it with a pledge like we do in America? And I'm able to write, Syed says, great question, blah, blah, blah. This is Syed's answer. And do girls play sports there? Syed says. So that was pretty neat to be able to do in real time, take his picture and post it up with all the others. Here are just 2 examples of site visits. This is a school in Bahrain, the Hawar International School. This is in a special ed classroom that we were able to visit. This is me talking with Dr. Jawahari, Abdulrahman Jawahari. He is the president of GPIC, one of the sponsoring organizations. It's Gulf Petrochemical Industry Corporation, I think. They paid for our flights. So it was really nice to be able to talk to him about why he feels that it's worth his corporation's while to channel resources in our direction. He was really inspired by the idea that we were going ag STEM. Some unexpected discoveries. These are 2 folks who work in the Ministry of Education in Qatar. We spent the day reviewing their vision for 2030. This was specifically for English education. I'm teaching English this year, but as a long time social studies teacher, I feel like I absolutely could rise to that challenge. So they had given us the homework of reading their 90-page vision and answering questions, and then we discussed our feedback. This is in a coffee shop in, I believe in Doha, in old Doha. This is me and another group member trying to figure out how to play the local version of checkers. Finally, the guy making coffee came over and said, no, you're doing it all wrong. He explained it to us, and then we played. So here's a YouTube channel that I created for the classroom. It has my journey and itinerary, and then I uploaded probably 15 videos. If you've got the stomach for it, you can go on. I mean, I'm not a very good videographer. I just did it with my phone. I think you just go to YouTube and you type in Region 12 and my name. You should be able to find it. And then here, the quality, the light quality is not that great. But that was us in a self-driving car in Masdar City, right outside of Abu Dhabi. It's one of the world's only sustainable cities, which is pretty darn exciting. They piloted a lot of their technologies with MIT for about 10 years. And that's partially what I mean about a knowledge-based economy. If you're interested in this, there's Doha, Qatar has a new development called Education City, wherein 7 American universities have established faculties, and I mean that the old-fashioned European definition of faculty, like the Institute of Specialized Subject. So like you can go to Northwestern University to their journalism school in Doha. You can go to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service in Doha. Carnegie Mellon's, I forget which one, but Cornell's, is it the Weill Medical Center in Cornell? Is out there. VCU's School of Design is there. So Texas A&M has the School of Management, I think. So these are schools right now that have 160, 170 students, maybe 60 of which are Qatari. The other 100 are for international students. So I don't know if that would be an option that would appeal to any of our kids, but I think they tend to be better funded, and it is an equivalent diploma. So that was really interesting to learn about. All right, I'm going to skip the self-driving car video. It's 45 seconds, but every time I touch it, it screws up. Okay. The Islamic Museum in Doha was designed by IMP, so oh my gosh, if you like architecture. And this is just shot from the walkway when you walk in. This part right here is the light that goes across the top, sort of like this. And then the dome is up, I don't know, like 6 stories or something. It's really a remarkable museum. And this is the Fanar Islamic Center in Doha. They gave us abayas, so now I have an abaya and a hijab. The abaya is the long black garment that women wear, and the hijab is a head wrap. So for me personally, highlights were architecture, seeing old and new. The food was fantastic, and a conversation that I had with some women at the Community College of Qatar. I had put my bag down and gone to get coffee, and I came back to a large round table, and there were probably 9 women, some in their late teens and some in their mid 40s, early 50s. Some were in hijab. I mean, everybody was to the floor in abaya. But many were wearing the niqab, and I all of a sudden became aware of my little invisible suitcases of assumptions that I had been toting around without realizing it. I had not fully realized that I was kind of intimidated. I had an otherness going with women who were veiled to that degree. That was sort of jarring, like, whoa, check yourself. So I drew on my courage and went down and said, all right, let's just have a chat, and sat down with them and heard everybody's name. And being a teacher, I was able to remember maybe half of them, so that was good. And I said, can I ask you guys some questions? Like, how do you recognize your friend across the room or across the market? Because everyone, is head to toe in black, and they all giggled, and they said, well, it's the eyes, or maybe the shoes. I asked them how they went up and down stairs, holding maybe a kid and groceries, and then I was like, oh, duh. They have domestic help. They may not carry their own children, which is strange, but reflective of what we saw. But many of them told me they had had their driver's license for 15 years. So even though men and women in this part of the world tend to be separated for education after the 6th grade, I realized that, because women choose to wear a veil doesn't signal oppression. And I've taught women's studies, now gender studies, for a really long time. So I knew this I've read it in magazines, I've heard about it level, but to react in the gut and say like, wow, I still carry that with me. This was really good to dismantle some of that misplaced thinking. I think I'm just at the end. In case, well, I told some of my colleagues about this. I wanted to just make this overt to you guys. There are so many great professional learning opportunities for educators. A lot of them happen during the summer. Mr. Sinatra, I've got tons of information if you would like it. And I know the most about the ones that involve the humanities. Rita Gregory, who is a teacher at the primary level, also did a Fulbright. After one of these presentations, she was inspired to give it a try, and she had a great experience, I think, in Hungary. But many of these are funded, but it still does take your support. We ask for letters of recommendation. Sometimes we require professional development days, as you guys granted me. I couldn't have done this without that, without Dr. Costantino's support. Even though everything was funded except for $250, which the region paid. Thank you very much. And most of these are funded. You guys still do provide the release support, and then sometimes, budgeting for like mileage and things like that. So it helps us model so much of the Shepaug mission, the Region 12 mission, about the importance of lifelong learning, about cross-disciplinary curiosity. I mean, these aren't just pretty phrases, to hang on a banner. This is real. And as we grow as learners and masters of content and cross-disciplinary content, nobody said, how does this relate to 8th grade English? Thank goodness. It relates to creating a richly informed family that asks better questions of each other. And I think all of these help to do that. So I just wanted to remind you that this helps allow me to live more fully the Region 12 mission. It's for all learners, grown-ups too. And as we are empowered by knowledge, character, and perseverance to achieve our greatest potential, we inspire the young ones around us that does matter, that invigorates a person and helps them achieve their purpose. So with that, thank you very much. I, again, applaud you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. It sounds like when were you there? How long were you there? 2 weeks. Okay. Is there any questions for Wendy? Yeah, Valerie.
Possible to have any kind of exchange here? Because wouldn't it be great? Yeah.
Because I was uncertain as to how receptive the region would be about that. Like, who's going to house them, and is it insured, and all that sort of stuff. And those are really important questions. But if there's interest here, I would be willing to do the work to find that stuff out. I mean, people who want to come, they want to experience a little bit of time in the U.S., but they also really especially like to see.
I'd love that.
Wendy, thank you. And the dates are great. I'm sorry, Michelle.
I just wanted to thank you for going, because I think because it's so clearly reinvigorated you and enriches what you're able to teach, and brings a lot of the curriculum alive. And I think that is what, like you said, is modeling good behavior for our students and is exciting for them. The fact that you had that many students submit questions is remarkable. I mean, you couldn't give extra credit to kids who aren't even in your class. So I don't know how you did that. Nobody can get that kind of response on a survey unless they're pretty excited about the topic. So I think it's exciting for the whole community when our teachers do this. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
That is so cool.
All right, then moving on to item 6, committee reports. Building. Greg, any report?
Building, I don't believe the building committee has met since the last time we met, and I believe we are going to have a meeting possibly sometime this month, but it's a little bit up in the air. We're waiting to see what developments in terms of the plans that are coming in and the discussions with with the state. I think we have pretty much weighed in on what we had to at this point, so I'm not sure that we have anything planned immediately for a meeting.
All right. Thank you. Education or curriculum, Michelle or Michael?
I think, we're meeting, I don't know, in 2 weeks, I'm guessing. Yep. And I believe it's the multi-age classroom is right on the agenda, or no?
Well, it depends on whether or not we have the AgStem financial. So if not, it'll be in January.
We can't do both.
It's still up in the air.
Okay. All right. So to be determined for our next meeting.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ed Advance, anything? Anybody since last meeting? Valerie?
You went to
I'd already reported on that, and the December meeting was canceled. But one thing I'd like to mention is that we're kind of helping out, getting kind of a reporting, finance committee style reporting system to Ed Connection board members that hasn't existed. Take kind of learning from Bob and spreading it around, because they're talking about doing renovations to a building and they don't really have a capital plan, which surprised me, for the board to look at. So, we're learning a lot here, and we'll apply it there to Ed Connection, whose budget is about $22 million. So I was rather surprised that it wasn't more codified.
All right. Thank you, Valerie. Facilities, Greg, anything?
We have not had a meeting since last time. We canceled it in favor of a building committee meeting that night, so we're going to meet this, the 19th
Of December?
of December.
All right, thank you. Finance, Valerie, anything?
I just drove in from D.C., hell-bent for leather, 7 hours on the road just to be here tonight, but I wasn't able to get to the Finance Committee meeting, so I handed over to Michelle or Anthony.
Anyone who can report in the finance meeting?
I was there. I think for the most part, I would say not too much to report. I mean, we went over the monthly financials like we usually do, and there was very little unexpected or changed from the previous month. The final unexpended budget is currently 4.9%. It was 5.5 last month, and it was, I think Bob said 4.8 at this time last year. So we're tracking on budget. Waiting to, I guess the only, we have a grant that we're waiting for to come in, and we have a couple of special ed things on the potential expenditures on the horizon, but we're not sure about that. But everything else is tracking normally.
Anthony, you want to add something?
Yes. Sorry. Bob put together a schedule of AgStem expenditures to date, and what they, detailed accounting of what they were and or have been, and where they were getting paid from, as well as a schedule of expenses or to be incurred expenses from Castle Blues. So I was going to suggest we really didn't have a lot of time. I think that's why we were a little tardy. I know that's why we were a little tardy coming to the meeting, because we were rushing Bob to get through it. But I'd suggest, Bob, that we put this as part of the agenda with the business case, that that you could share this detail with the board. Yeah, get it packaged up and so everyone can understand this. I will just comment that just briefly looking at it, I think it's consistent with what our current knowledge has been about these expenses, because I know there's been some questions coming at the board in terms of how much money has been spent. Well, I could say I don't see anything that's out of the ordinary, but I thought it would be a good idea to kind of package it up and refresh everybody's knowledge when we do the business case.
All right, that's a good suggestion. Thanks. Anyone else? Any questions?
Can I
Yes.
just add to the Finance Committee? We're going to have a meeting at 1 o'clock on the 8th with a couple of citizens that have been questioning us a lot, as is their right, about the ag STEM and some methodology, particularly with the population numbers we've been using. So we're going to have just kind of a casual, brief conversation with them at the CO at 1, and hopefully we will go a long way to solving some issues that arise. The central office. Right.
I'm sorry, that's this week, the 8th.
This week, this Thursday, 1 o'clock, central office. Just a couple of us are going to sit down with a couple of citizens.
Really? Okay. Greg, did you have something? No. All right. Anything else? All right, thank you for that. Long-range planning, Alan, anything?
Oh yeah, we meet every other month, so we haven't met since I last reported. Although I have a little heads up, in that prior meeting, we had talked about the fact that we have our surveys for teachers, students, and parents are underway, and that we wanted to add community and administrators. We've so far, I think, backing off of administrators because there are too few to be to maintain our anonymity. However, we have gotten a little bit somewhere on the community survey. Panorama does have community survey ready, and I got a list of the questions from Karen Fildes yesterday, and I want to send it out to the rest of the committee. And we're thinking maybe we can, because it's community, maybe we could have whoever wants to from other aspects. Community means the greater community of residents and taxpayers, as opposed to anybody who's directly affiliated with the school, which we've kind of covered, we think, in families and parents. But we might add staff and other entities to that as well to get their opinion without having that kind of a sore thumb position of such a few amount of people reporting with fear that anonymity will not be possible that way. So I say all this because a little heads up, we might have to try to sneak in a quick long-range planning committee meeting within the next few weeks, or maybe we can do it by email. I know we can't do things like that in our full board, but maybe we can take a look at questions and deliberate and do it all by email so that we can supplement our already existent surveys with this final survey, the community survey. So stay tuned.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Alan? All right, thank you, Alan. Negotiations. Greg, anything?
Yes, we have completed negotiations with the teachers of a contract, which we expect will be bringing to the board shortly. I still haven't heard whether or not they have.
They've ratified.
Have they ratified it?
Now it's just going back and forth between
Okay.
Gary and
Yeah. So we as soon as we have a version of it to put in front of you, we'll bring it to a meeting to take it into executive session, discuss it, and then come out and vote one way or another on it. But
Yeah, that's good news. We were able to reach a tentative settlement, and you're saying the teachers have approved it?
Yes.
In negotiation, it wasn't necessary to go to mediation or anything like that, so
Yep.
That's great.
good news for us if we can get it done. All right, thank you, Greg. Policies and bylaws, Michelle?
We continue to meet, and we have several items on the agenda, so I'll just leave it at that.
All right, well, we might as well get into it. Item 771, second reading, policy, unless anybody has anything on committees? I'm sorry, all right. Item 7.1, second reading, policy 4152.6,
Yep.
personal leaves.
Yep. So we talked about this at the, or I don't know when it was, last month. And all of the changes that were suggested were put in. There was a question, though, about the civil union language. And we went back to CABE to get updated language. And you can see those changes here in this version. So the yellow are the new words, and the strike-throughs are what they're proposing be taken out in order to become compliant. And there's the new statute definition down at the bottom. So thank you, Rebecca, for pointing that out. And I think this should take care of the issue.
All right.
Question.
Valerie?
Move to accept for a second reading.
Is there a second? Second by Jen, thank you.
Some discussion, though.
Yes,
before we
yes.
move
Is
to a
there
vote.
any further discussion?
I'm sorry, I was not at the last meeting, and I missed this particular policy, and it's one of those policies that I hadn't paid a lot of attention to, but because we've just been negotiating a contract, has this at some point in the near past been reviewed by our current council to make sure that it's not inconsistent with any of the labor contracts we have? I don't think it is, because I think it says that if they're eligible under the Family and Medical Leave Act, they get family and medical leave, and I think all of our contracts anticipate that because it's the law.
Right.
We
Well,
have to do it.
we try never to go beyond the law as a general rule of thumb for policy. So this is updated because if you look down at the history, it had not been updated since 1998. So in order to be compliant with state and federal regulation, this is what we needed to do. I would assume that our council is also following the law in the contracts. I obviously have not put the two side by side, but we did not go beyond the law in our policy.
No, and what we've tried to do in our contracts is we've tried very carefully to make sure that we take out any language that's inconsistent with statute on statutory benefits like this. And we usually succeed in getting those to say what the law is, or that we're going to comply with this law or have benefits based on that. I just am always nervous about when we have because we bargain these contracts, and what we would not want to do is do anything inconsistent with the contract in our policies. And I just have not had a chance to sit and read it against one of our contracts.
Right, and I haven't seen the contract, so I haven't done that either. But I would, if neither side is trying to exceed the law, I don't see why they wouldn't be in alignment. But we certainly, I don't know if it's Gary, our counsel for negotiations.
He is. I think you should take a look at these any policies that relate to things that are in employment contracts. I just haven't had a chance to go through all the policies to try to pull them out, but I think we probably should look at them just to make sure there's no inconsistencies that then give rise to a difficulty, in a labor context down the road. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead.
Sure. One thing, and then Anthony. I would just say if we're going to forward policies to Gary for review, that it should be with the clear definition of the to just alert us of any conflict, because otherwise he tends to like to just start rewriting them.
Anthony?
So to that end, Greg, could we not just insert an order of precedence sentence that just establishes the contract as the primary? And then that'll, whenever there's a conflict, that the contract will, I know you get it, but.
Yeah, no, I thought of that, but then I started thinking, well, that's not something I want to just freelance. This is very complicated federal regulations and statutes, and I'd really rather have counsel to tell us if we want to put something like that in there, than have us do something and find out we're in violation of a federal statute.
I understand it, but I'm just trying to get at Michelle's point, rather than having Gary rewrite everything.
No, I don't want him to rewrite it. I would ask him. I agree. I would ask him to look at it and say, is there any conflict between this and any of the employment contracts we've entered into? If there is, please tell us. We're not looking to make this better. We're looking to make sure it's not inconsistent.
So is it your suggestion that the vote on the second reading be put off until he has a chance to do that?
Can I?
I'm sorry, I'm asking Greg a question.
Well, it'd be my preference, and I apologize for not having been keyed into this sooner, but it wasn't until I thought about it after I read it. I didn't see it last time. I wasn't, unfortunately,
Valerie?
wise engaged.
Well, I'll defer to Michael for a moment.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a board council that reviews everything that we get in terms of the updates. So obviously this is the latest as far as state and federal regulations. Now, so I'm just concerned again about him spending, the region's money reviewing something that's already been reviewed. I think if you had any concerns about our contracts going above and beyond federal regulations If you think, for example, that we've been offering a more generous package and you're concerned about that from a bargaining position, I think that that's a valid concern. I'm just not sure if he needs to weigh in on that.
Well, the only thing I would say is that although CABE has counsel that looks at these things, and these things do get reviewed by lawyers, those lawyers aren't representing us and aren't familiar with our labor contracts. Our lawyer is. My guess is he'd read through this thing and he should be able to say off the top of his head that, no, this is not a problem and doesn't conflict. I mean, maybe if I read it a couple more times myself, I could get a sense of it, that it just simply is the minimum legal requirement. But the thing that threw me off when I read it was this eligibility criteria. I'm not familiar with that. He would be. I'm not. But, again, if you don't want to do it, we don't have to do it. But I'm just saying that what we would really want to do, especially since we're now about to sign off on a contract, it would be nice to make sure that our policy is in compliance with the contract and doesn't go under it or over it, and thus create some kind of an ambiguity. Because what happens is those ambiguities then get dragged into labor grievances or other types of actions, and we just want to make sure that we've got the proper policy. But if you want to adopt this and come back to it, I don't know what the effect of that will be.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I just gave up my spot for Michael briefly, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Val.
Well, that sounds reluctant. The board sets policy. We're setting this policies after we agree on a second reading. So the contracts have to be in compliance with the policy we're setting, not the other way around. So I suggest we take this as a second reading. This is our policy. And then we ask our attorney, especially since we have a fresh contract, just to make sure that it's in compliance in the wording. But it shouldn't be the other way around, and that's important. We set policy, and this is it.
Is there anyone else? Yes, Michelle?
Lisa had her hand up first.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This is all new to me, so I just have a question. The policy that we're looking at, the highlighted area and the cross-through area, that's what you're changing?
Well, this is what we're changing since the first reading. The first reading had more changes from our original 1998 policy. And if you want to see what those changes were, you need to go back to the packet.
Okay.
And I think there was a fair amount of language definitions updated, and some of the eligibility, that paragraph looks a little different.
Okay.
So that's sort of the record keeping of the proposed changes.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of changes that's being made.
So the first reading, there were a fair amount.
Okay.
And everyone was good with that, except for we had a question about the language using civil unions.
I see.
And to back up, I should explain that had an audit done of our policies, and had there were, I forget, 30 or 40 that were no longer compliant.
Okay.
And revisions were made for us, and it's taking us a while to get through them.
Okay.
And so sometimes in that amount of time, things have changed or laws have been cleaned up, and so that's why we're finding some of these things as we go through.
Okay. Thank you.
That makes sense. Sure.
Anyone else? Yes, Michelle.
Well, I would just for procedural purposes, I feel that if we could go ahead and approve the second reading tonight so that we can continue to move forward, but ask that Gary just review this for compliance. I feel that the chances are very great that they will line up perfectly, and therefore then we wouldn't have to come back to the board again. We'd be all set. I think it's much less likely that this policy is going to be in conflict with the newly negotiated contract. So I think it would be easier if we went ahead and approved. And if for any reason we need to change the language in the policy, we can always bring it back, because we do it all the time.
All right. Well, speaking for myself, quite frankly, I would rather, quite frankly, bring it back at the next meeting, have council look at it first.
All right.
But, Michelle, I hear what you're saying, and so I'm not going to stand in the way of that. It's been moved and seconded. I will still pass it to council to make sure it doesn't conflict with our pending contract. So hopefully there'll be no issues. All right, is there anything else, Anthony?
Can I offer a friendly amendment? Is that the process that we could approve for second readings, subject to council's approval as written?
Mr. Cabo, what do you think about that? I don't think that's a,
Except for a second reading, subject to council's review and approval.
As written.
yeah, as written.
So in other words, if he comes back with no changes, we're done.
I think you could do that. I mean, it would be better than approving it as is. I would vote against it, accepting it for
Well,
second reading
that's why,
without that language.
That's a good.
that's why I'm offering the.
All right, so there's been
Who's moved? Who moved?
who made the original
It was
motion? Deb?
Valerie.
Valerie made
Will you accept a friendly amendment? All right, is there a second to that?
I think it was.
Second?
I think it was Jen's second.
Okay, and Jen, will you accept that?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Good.
Now, do we need to vote on the amendment first, or just, do we have a motion before us? I'm never,
So now we've.
all right, so the motion then is to approve 5142.6, I'm sorry, personal leaves for second reading, subject to review by board council, to determine if it's, matches with our contract as is. Is that right? Is that fairly stated? As written, fine. All right, anything further? Anything further? All right, all those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, approve it. I will send it to our attorney tomorrow with that question, and I'll copy Michelle on that.
Thanks.
Okay? All right, item 8, new business, first reading, 5117.1, intra-district choice / open enrollment. Michelle.
All right. So this is a policy. If you look down at the history, it had not been touched since 1998. There are some updates. The new language is in yellow, as always. I know there is some No Child Left Behind language in here, but because it's been recommended that we bring the policy up to date with what is currently on the books, knowing that that could change in the future with ESA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. But until there's no way to know how long that will take. So at least this will bring us up into compliance with what is currently on the books. And it is sort of interesting to read because we found it interesting because it talks about the availability of vocational technical schools and the and agricultural centers. And so it's something that we've become more familiar with recently, but has been in operation for a long time. So.
All right, anything further? Greg?
Yeah, could I make a request of all policies? And that is the first time a term of art is used, it should be spelled out. And then with that if you're going to use acronyms like AYP and NCLB, the first time you reach it, it should spell out No Child Left Behind, parentheses, NCLB.
Oh, the first time it appears in the policy. I got you.
The first time it appears ever in a document, whether it be a policy or anything else, acronyms should not be used. Educators must ban the use of acronyms in written documents that have not been defined. Because unfortunately, what you forget is that although you know them, the rest of the free world doesn't, and then you end up with a policy that's unclear to people. And so that's why I think that should be done, and that's sort of the lawyer approach to things. Is if you're going to use an acronym, define it first.
Anything
That
else?
seems
Anthony?
fine.
It's more than just a lawyer. because that was my question, and I was just coming from just purely from an uninformed standpoint. So I'd appreciate it if the acronyms were spelled out first.
All right. Anything else? Valerie? No, we don't. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there, yes, Valerie?
You don't have yellow changes?
Huh.
What? We all, yeah, I was gonna say,
I don't know, mine came out.
are you opening? Is it because it's on your iPad? Because it's because it was the folder that was shared with all of us. Like it went to BOE, so I don't know why. Is that a
All right.
I don't know.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve 5117.1 as a first reading. Is there anything else?
Are we gonna fix the acronyms in it?
I'm sure we will.
Do that. I wrote down to spell that out, and you should look for that
Okay.
in the second reading.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything else? All right, all those in favor of approving 5117.1 intra-district choice/open enrollment as first, for a first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, it passes. Thank you. Next, item 8.2, first reading, 5142, student safety. Michelle.
All right. Again, and I'm sorry, Valerie, is this one coming up with some yellow? What- That, yeah, I was going to say everything from 6 down is yellow. That's so weird. So it's like a formatting thing. I think it's an iPad thing. You'll see that this policy had not been touched since 1998. If you look through the added language, it looks like there's a lot being added to this policy, but, well, it is being added to this policy. However, much of this we are already doing, and it is in other safe school climate areas. And so this is sort of a cross-reference to make sure that it's inside this policy as well under student safety. So if you look down, where did I see? They've got the safe school climate coordinator is mentioned, and all of that exists in some of our other safety policies. So this is bringing them to be consistent with each other.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah. Yes, Greg.
Are we actually doing annual audits of the effectiveness of the school safety and security plans?
Which number are you looking at, Greg?
10.
Yes, Dr.
I know. I was gonna say
Our school safety officer does an audit every year and goes around to each school and checks the plans and the built site and all that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming that has something to do with it. We also have response people. We have school safety officer. We'll have police officers, state police, or the resident troopers. We'll have local fire agents who will be there when we do lockdowns and fire drills. And so, yes, we do it.
Do we have fire safety people here when we're doing fire drills?
Yes, not everyone, but yes, because we have to do a fire drill and or a lockdown every month. So yes, I'm not going to say every month, but absolutely.
I just would point out that it says that law enforcement and local public safety officials shall evaluate all fire and crisis response drills. So I think you need them here every time, or we need to adjust this policy. What worries me is when we adopt these policies that are CABE sponsored, everybody in the state, and then we don't follow through on them. We put ourselves at risk if something happens as a result. Because the first thing, Exhibit A in any case is going to be Did you follow your policy? Answer, no, we don't have the fire department here at all fire drills. Now, it's one thing if the fire chief can't respond to the fire drill because they're responding to a fire. But if we're not making an effort to get them at every one, then I think we have an issue. So that's all I'm suggesting.
Can I ask a question? Are you referring to item 10?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, doesn't that indicate a kind of a visual review of the audit results? I mean, not a physical presence? Isn't it just looking at a procedure and how we, for instance, what is posted out on that door and whether that's adequate or not? I mean, obviously we can't have, if we had a whole assemblage of fire trucks and ambulance and police up here every time we test, that would be quite a feat and frankly prying wolf too many times.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but then we should change the policy because the policy does say they're going to evaluate the drills. It doesn't say they're going to evaluate the
Yes,
procedures.
they can be told what these drills are and whether it's adequate, not physically be here.
First sentence says regular audits at least annually, so I think those two are somehow linked. So I don't know if it's literally all, but I think when I read that last sentence, it says, reading that all of your fire and crisis drills have to be reviewed at least annually with the help of local officials, is how I read it.
Well, but you got to read it more carefully because it says conducting regular audits annually to evaluate the effectiveness of each school's safety and security plans. Now, that's a generic, I mean, that's an annual audit of the plan. Then it goes first responders, local law enforcement, entire school community shall be involved in the process. That's just good. Then it says law enforcement and local public safety officials shall evaluate all fire and crisis response drills. If it meant to say shall evaluate the process or the procedures or anything like that, that's what it should say. But if it says they're going to evaluate all drills, I think it means they're going to be present at the facility and evaluating the drill. And that makes sense because they want to see whether or not you're getting people out of the right areas of the building in the right amount of time. I mean, it seems to me that's what's
Crazy time.
Closure on this as to what's the right.
Well, hold on, please, one at a time. Michael?
Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happens after every drill that we do, if we have a lockdown drill, for example, the school is collecting data on how that drill went. That data is getting forwarded to the school resource officer, for example, the fire department. I mean, so
School
I
resource
believe that's all
officer.
being done.
School resource officer is at every drill if it is possible. So the principal will call. They'll also ask resident troopers to be there. And they always evaluate after. I can't say, though, that with 100% certainty they're there at all, because there could be something going on here at Shepaug and she can't get out and they've already scheduled something. So, but I can say that we definitely do our due diligence because we learn afterwards and we make changes and we tweak.
Can I make a motion? Do you have a motion yet? No.
Motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept policy for first reading 5142 for first reading. And I would, though, eliminate in that the word all. Item 10, last sentence. Make it general.
All right, there's a motion. Michelle?
I would just like to say that I will check to make sure that we can, that that's not state statute, that it's there. And if we are allowed to take out the word all, we definitely will. And if we're not, I will report
And that would be
back
for the
a
second reading. Okay, thanks.
All right, so there's a motion to approve with that modification. Is there a second to that? I'm sorry, Rebecca?
I'm not looking to second. I actually wanted to comment on what we've been discussing. Do you want
Is
to
there-
still look for a second?
Is there a second on the motion? All right, Anthony seconds. Now, Rebecca.
I don't believe that that last sentence reads that somebody needs to be present. It says they shall evaluate, not be present for. And I'm actually more comfortable leaving shall evaluate all than I am with shall evaluate and remove the all, because that means that regardless of who's here and who's not here during the time of the drill, we are promising that we evaluate every incident that we go through. And I think that that's more important. And I don't believe that we're being contradictory by saying shall evaluate and not guaranteeing that somebody's here at the time of the drill. We aren't saying that law enforcement and local public safety officials shall be present. I don't have a problem with it as written.
Okay, we have a motion to approve with removing the word all, which has been seconded. Michelle?
I would just say, when I'm getting clarification on that clause there, I'll find out what the intent. Does it mean present? Does it mean to evaluate? You know, I'll find out whether it's removing the word all or if evaluate is the problem. Well, I'll find out the intent of that whole phrase.
Alan?
Yeah, I think it's just confusion over the word evaluate. I mean, it's not the word monitor, which means to be on site and watching it happen. You can evaluate things afterwards. And even the top, where the other use of the word evaluate is conducting a regular audit, at least annually, to evaluate effectiveness. So you can evaluate something after the fact or at a distance from something. It doesn't say monitor on site. So I think we can leave the language the way it is with all in there and approve it for second reading and have Michelle come back to find out what the whether that is mysteriously intending to have somebody a whole fleet on presence on site each time.
Greg?
I was just going to suggest, Michelle, perhaps you can, when you figure out, when you ask them about what they meant by that, I guess what my concern is I hear what Alan's saying and I hear what Rebecca is saying, but what I'm just a little bit concerned about is how do you evaluate a fire drill if you're not there? I mean, practically speaking, it's not like, do we film them? Maybe there's a way you can do it, but do we film them? Do we keep logs? Do we evaluate? Do we count how long it took to get the kids out of the school? I mean, if we have
They
a
always
list
do
of
that.
things, then perhaps they can evaluate it. But what you might want to do, if you don't get a better answer from anyone, we might want to ask our resource officer or whoever is doing this what they think. I mean, can you evaluate this if you're not present? And if the answer is not really, I can't, then I think we should reevaluate this.
All right. Well, I'll find out what the intent is because we don't want to necessarily sign ourselves up to go above and beyond what we have to do. But
You have to be on site to evaluate him evaluating.
All right,
Some of us are getting tired and cranky. Can we move on?
I'm trying.
That's too much evaluating.
There's a motion on the floor to approve this policy, 5142, just removing the word all from the last line of paragraph 10, and that's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Knowing that it can be changed, and Michelle will come back to us on a second reading. Is there anything further? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, I'm sorry, Alan, you are? Okay. And one opposed. Any abstain? All right, it passes for a first reading. Lastly, 8.3, first reading, 5145.14, on-campus recruitment. Michelle.
Sorry, Valerie, I don't know what you got for this one, but the yellow language is the new proposed language.
The ESA? ESA?
I'm sorry, you said ESA? Oh, yes. I will have acronyms that are put in for the first time spelled out, so I'm going to make a note of that right now. We have touched this policy since '98. We revised it in 2010, but you'll see the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015, as well as another public act required that these changes be made.
Anthony.
So I noticed in this one, there's a couple of places where the board has discrete actions. Like, for example, the board shall also post information regarding the school options on its website. Is there anything literally that the board needs to do, or just
I think the board can act through the administration.
through the administration?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And is this, Dr. Costantino, I assume this ESSA requirement would be published in the student handbook so that parents know they have
Yes,
the right
this comes out, the first newsletter from the high school every year. where parents are and students are informed that, we're going to be sending military information out as required by law, and if you'd like to opt out, you can do so. So,
Jim?
Yes, Valerie.
A couple of things. First off, and then I have two requests. We have to define ESSA and move to adopt as a first reading.
Is there a second? No, we've got it down here.
And the last point, other than ESSA, is perhaps these
Stephanie?
changes can be colorblind and made into italics. Could that be done so that, it's not a matter of seeing a color, but seeing italics, knowing that's the changed part?
I would.
Or is that going to be difficult?
Well, they use italics sometimes, as they did in this
That's
policy.
true. That's true.
So I've found the color to be pretty helpful, except for when it doesn't come through on yours.
Could I offer a suggestion in that regard?
All right, hold
Yeah.
on, please, folks. Yes, Greg?
It is traditional in the legal profession to redline documents, and that really means that you underline materials that have been added, and you strike through materials that are being deleted. That way, it doesn't matter whether or not it prints in color or black and white, because the problem you run into is you have different facilities that show it different ways, but it usually always shows a strike through or an underline. And I don't think you have anything in any of the policies that are underlined per se by themselves, and that way it avoids the italic issue. And I think if you use track changes, but I don't know whether you can do that because you're using Google Docs to do these things, as opposed to other types. But it would be nice if the changes could be tracked in a standard Word or
We could do that. I've
word-perfect
always liked
manner.
when it shows up, it just is so clear, and you can just jump right to it. But because Sue Haverly, what we're doing as a committee, just so you know, sometimes it comes straightforward, but other times we're matching together, reading. Sometimes Teresa and I will sit there and read word for word. Like I have the new and she has the old, and we're trying to figure out which version has the least amount of changes, so we use that as the base document. We line up everything. So it's kind of a tedious process. I think it all happens in Word and then is thrown into the Google Docs. So I can certainly ask that we do underline instead of the highlights. I'm trying to remember if it comes from CABE. Sometimes they do highlighting on our updates, but I don't know about the. I
Why
can
don't
ask.
just let us know what you can find out before
Yeah.
you make any changes, because it seems
Yeah.
everybody except Valerie's got the yellow.
I'm
Is that right?
sorry. I hate to, mini iPad,
All right.
You would think. And the thing is, it's Google. Like once you're on your server, I don't know why formatting would matter.
Okay. All right. We have a motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded, 5145.14 on-campus recruitment. Is there anything else? Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving for a first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, it's approved for a first reading. Thank you. All right, 8.4, the new item. Alan, you're on.
Is that this is what I'm asking for will be a hardship on the people that it affects. I realize that it's an imposition as the school year comes to a close, as we have other issues, as we have the holidays. But the reason I'm asking about it, and I want us to deliberate, and then when I'm through jabbering now, I'll make a motion, and then we can talk.
Well,
Is
just tell us exactly what
Yeah.
are you asking? Explain why.
What I'm asking is we had talked last time about a new business plan or a new financial plan, which would be the final piece of information in this. And I know there are a lot of moving parts that balances cost versus revenue, and revenue is very tied to population, and population has changed of the Ag STEM project, and costs have changed. As we saw last week, the costs have very nicely gone down. But if we have the business plan, which will show where we stand as far as the financing needed and as far as the cost to the taxpayers over the next 20 years, if we have that more than a day before the forum with the public, then both the board and the public will be able to analyze and read and digest and think these things through over a greater period of time. And the reason that I feel that's important is because it's a big question. It's a big question that there are, at least to my opinion at the moment, there are three different answers for. One is that this AgSTEM project is very important regardless of the fact that the financial line changes, and it will cost money instead of either being neutral or making money for the district. And that is a wonderful thing for the district to plunge ahead with this project because it is so valuable. There's another opinion that says that it's a different project now, that it is a wonderful thing to have a project that is so good for so many kids, but our children are only a small percentage of that. And now that this is going to cost money, would it be better to spend that money on our kids alone with a different project, knowing that we have to spend however much more money than we thought we were before on this new project? And then I guess there's the other plan, which is people who don't want to do this at all. But that's neither here nor there. These two opinions really focus, and I think they're both valid, but they really focus on the actual numbers of the financial plan. And I think that the people who want to make a decision either way need to have that information. And I think it could come down to the board making this decision, or in another discussion we can talk about whether it has to go to a referendum again, which is a horrible, complicated thing about timing. But I think if we go into a forum and determine at that point that we have enough input from the public, which is not whoever's comes in more plentiful numbers or who is more loud or more angry or more disappointed or more happy, if we feel that we can judge from that feedback in the forum, maybe the board will make this decision without needing a referendum to go to the people to find out whether they feel differently about this now than they did. So even if we can make that decision at that forum, I think it's best if the people participating in the forum and the board members have had a chance to see the calculations for more than 24 hours, which is why I am asking, I'd like to make a motion that the business plan be ready for our next meeting on the 19th of December and not on the 9th of January as we discussed before, knowing and apologizing, this is not part of the motion, knowing and apologizing full well for the difficulty this will impose on Bob especially and on Pat and whoever else participates in this process. That's my motion, to have the business plan for AgSTEM project on December 19th. Can I get a second?
Is there a second to the motion, or is there anyone?
I'll second.
All right, it's been seconded. Does Bob or Pat want to be heard on the motion? Is it possible? Go ahead.
We are hoping that it's possible to do it by December 19th. There are a couple of cogs in the wheel. Number one, some of you received, some of you didn't. DAS still wants us to reduce the size of the project. They want us to go back and look at the greenhouses, which we are working on, with Castle Booze, which will reduce the cost again. So until we have a final cost, it's very hard to do a business plan. If we are not ready on December 19th, it was my plan to do something with the board, a special meeting before January 9th, because I agree that you can't do it January 9th and have a meeting January 10th. I agree with that. You know, we're trying to do that. That would be nice to have it on the 19th. The other thing I just want to mention, and being that Alan made the comment, I will mention it. We do not have to go back to referendum, but if we do, if the board decides to go back to referendum, you no longer have a project because you cannot interact with the state if you have not, secured the funds for your project. So if you decide to do that as a board, what you are saying is no AgSTEM, because the state has been very, very supportive. They are fighting tooth and nail to make this happen for us. And once we say no, with this fiscal climate, I think that's it. That's my opinion. But you will have missed this session. You'll have to try to get into the next session, but you all know it takes a long time to get a referendum. So you'd have to get something done by June 30th to be in the next year's referendum. It would be gone. So I'm very careful about putting that out there, that that's an option, because in my mind, that is not an option. But this is not my decision, but I just want to make that clear. And if Bob wants to add anything that I forgot, I'm happy to have him do so.
I mean, our intent is to get this done as quickly as we can. However, we do have pressing issues that we need statutorily to get completed, such as the audit. And that isn't completed at this point. We're working on simultaneously these things. We've already started to gather some of the information, and we're going to work on it as quickly as we can. I think that Pat's suggestion is correct, that anything we do needs to get to you before we do that meeting, and it might be that we come up with it right after the first of the year. I don't know. But we don't even, I think even Costas isn't going to be back until the end of the week.
Yeah, but
And we don't know.
the number has to be finalized. 'Cause it has
By
to be on
them,
the list
right.
By December 15th. Is that the date?
I believe that's what he said, yeah.
Right. So
He's got to get back to us.
We'll have a final number, but it's there's a lot of moving.
What about the greenhouse?
Hold on. I'll obviously hear everybody, but Alan, my inclination is to ask you to withdraw the motion. I think the superintendent understands what you're asking, which is perfectly valid. The board should have this business plan before the board, at least a couple weeks before the board is asked to make a decision. And it should be available to the public before a week or two, whatever, before we have, at least a week or two before we have this public forum. We haven't set the date for that yet. I mean, it's been discussed, but I can, go ahead.
Forms is set the January 10th.
All right. Well, I mean, so in other words, you're speaking about December 19. It may not be possible to do it, from what I'm hearing. They're going to try, but you're making a motion. If it's not done, we may have to have a special meetings on a day or, so I don't know when, but
Christmas
sometime
Eve,
after
oh
the
boy.
19th. So you can see what we're dealing with. I'll let you go first.
Well, I just, I wanted to speak after the other people that weighed in, but I just want to say to that, I told you I realized the pressure on both sides, because we probably need to have that meeting on the 10th, because we have time constraints on the other end. We can't push this out and say, well, we'll just make the meeting, the forum later in January, because we have to come to a decision, I think, by the end of January, and otherwise we're going to miss if we go through with it, the opening possibility for August 19.
Worse than that.
August 19.
Okay.
Right. All right. It's worse than that. So we are on a very tight schedule. So we can't push that out. So we just have to make sure that, we have the information with more breathing room. So I appreciate that. But I don't know. The other thing is the idea of the referendum. I do understand, and I think Bob,
no,
correct
we're not going
me.
there. Let's.
Well, no, because I want to make sure that we realize that we're making an actual. We have the opportunity to make an actual choice for to determine our will and the will of the people, other than saying that we really can't go back to referendum if necessary. Because what I'm saying is that I understand that once you change the number on the referendum, it resets the process, and that's what Bob's saying, right? That if you go to another referendum with another dollar figure or with anything to it, then it starts everything all over again, and we lose a year, right? So we lose everything. We even lose the faith of the state that we're behind this. So we could have potentially an informational referendum, which we've had in the past, that wouldn't affect the whole bonding aspect of it, would allow us to make sure that we're not going to have this kind of, all right,
I thought, that we were not talking about a referendum when we changed the
Valerie-
agenda to talk about
Valerie,
this. and
please
now
let
we're
me
talking
recognize
about
you.
something else.
Valerie, please. People have had their hands up. Anthony.
I've been pointing that out.
So I have two questions, Jim. Since we're on the referendum, my question regarding the referendum, and I don't want to debate whether we should or have one or what flavor it should be, but I think the question at large, with all due respect to everyone who's sitting at the table here, opinions are interesting, but on this particular question, I would like to know as factually as the facts around the question of referendum. What nullifies if the existing referendum, which gave us the authority to spend up to a certain amount, et cetera, et cetera. The mere fact that we actually table another referendum on the same subject, regardless of what it says, it could say, please reaffirm the first referendum that you did. If that triggers alone will trigger a cancellation and throw us off the tracks, I'd like a legal opinion as to what exactly our choices are here. It's too important to not be right about that. So can we, Pat, can you talk to Gary? Bond counsel,
bond
whomever, please? And I'm
I don't even, I will do that, absolutely. But in order, the reason, do you remember back when we had to get the permission to get an extension to November? Do you all remember that? We wanted to make the list, and the list closed June 30th, so we had to get permission from the state to have our referendum by November 10th, and they literally changed the law and put us in there. Okay. They did that because they will not accept, the state will not accept your project until you have secured all the funds. That's why when you vote, we went
Which
to
we have.
39.
We have a
Right,
referendum
we have-
that secures now
exactly.
more funds than we need, thanks
Right,
to DAS.
but okay.
So-
So now you take that and you go to the state. The state has that referendum. They have all that information. It was one of our conditions that we met. So now to go to the state and say, we don't have it because we're having another referendum.
Well, until the second referendum is voted upon, nothing nullifies the first referendum. Now, I don't,
Well-
again, I prefer not to debate this or try to be the Philadelphia lawyer. I would like somebody else
Okay.
to tell us the nuts and bolts of exactly where this thing can come off the tracks, inadvertently or on purpose or whatever, but I'd just like to understand that. My second question is around DAS. When did they tell us that we needed to do something, make further changes?
We got an email, I believe on Thursday. Jen Mangiali got an email from Costas. Right, thank you. Stating that they wanted us to look at the greenhouses, and with many, many questions. Can there be two? Why do you need one seasonal and not? A whole bunch of stuff. I mean, so can there be one? A whole bunch of questions. So Jen, myself, and Kim Gallo put together a response, sent it Friday. We never heard back from Costa on Friday. And then today, and in that response was the whole educational reason why we needed the two, and the background information about curriculum why we needed the two, information from the greenhouse experts who had the correct sizing, et cetera, et cetera. So today, Jen called Costa's office, and Costa is out until Thursday, but spoke to the two architects that we met with when we were there. And they gave us another list of questions of what they expected. And so Kim and Jen and I today worked on trying to maybe move things around a little bit. And so tomorrow, I don't know if they did it today or tomorrow, but tomorrow we will send another email to their office trying to not change the size of the greenhouses, possibly move the head house into the area where the sales is, because the sales is large. After Kim spoke to the expert said, well, if you're going to move the head house, you need to move the greenhouses on the other side. So, this is a never-ending back and forth compromise. So right now, they're still putting us on the priority, but they would like us, money is very tight, we all know. We're getting a lot of support, but they want it to decrease in size, again, the footprint, and we're trying to do that, again, without touching the program.
This is all around reducing the potential of reducing one greenhouse. Or was there more
Well,
to it?
Leah, let me step in there. It was a simple question. Why do you have two greenhouses? Can you have one? Answer, we have two because they perform different functions. One of them needs to be climate controlled. It makes no sense to have the other one climate controlled. We could combine the two of them into one greenhouse with both functions, but it would cost more than two greenhouses. So the whole point of this is that one of them is a relatively inexpensive greenhouse. The climate controlled one has multi-pane glass on it, so it's a lot more expensive to build. So the whole point of this is we can't go down from 2 to 1. So the next question is, can you make the two smaller? And that's what we're in the process of trying to scope out, as to whether or not we can reduce the size, or whether there was something about the design size that has to be that size, because you're trying to accommodate equipment, you're trying to accommodate growth areas, and you're trying to accommodate students. This isn't just a greenhouse that's got a commercial greenhouse where you've got two people walking through it. It's got classes going on in it. It's a student thing. The other problem, I think, is the state has multiple applications for greenhouses. And it looks at those greenhouses and says, well, why does this one from Nonawag, 500 square feet, and each of yours is 3,000 square feet? Or whatever, 1,800 square feet. And the answer is because Nonawag doesn't have enough space between the building and the road, and therefore they put a whole bunch of little stubby greenhouses, and that's why. So you see, the problem, this is never done in a vacuum, and they're looking at other proposals. Some of the other greenhouses they're looking at are not for ag STEM, because our architects know that they're looking at half a dozen of them that are not ag STEM greenhouses. They're for different kinds of programs at schools, and they're small. And so, they look at all these little greenhouses and say, why are yours so big? Answer, different program. We looked at greenhouses at multiple ag STEM schools. Some of them, one of the schools has 5,000 square feet of greenhouses. Okay, so ours are actually right pretty much in the middle, and they're probably close to the minimum we need. We might be able to shave a few feet off, but I don't think it makes any sense to start separating the head house and the greenhouse and stuff like that. The only question is whether you could get the head house in the building, at that end of the building, and the answer is no, you can't.
So all this needs to be into DAS by the 12th still?
It all needs, it's being done as we speak. It's going back and forth right now. It's a conversation with their architects and our architects, and this is the Board of Education. This is how, bureaucracy at its finest.
Peter.
I'm getting a little confused with all this minutia. Anthony made a proposal for the board to the public, and it had certainly specifications in what we were looking for the public to support, in far as numbers and everything. Now, things are starting to change. What is the legal obligation? What are the legal parameters in which the board can or cannot operate in without going back to the public?
May I? I have the document.
Valerie, go ahead.
We were all sent a letter from bond counsel, Doug Gillette. I have it as of October 27th. I'll forward it all to you. And it clearly gives us the latitude to modify the project. I'll read if you have a moment. Note that the Board of Education is specifically authorized to modify the scope of the project and expend entire appropriation on the modified project. Also note that the details of the project description set out is the bond resolution, includes the language, quote, contemplated to include, end quote, indicating that the project specifications are subject to change. So, to get to the original motion, I know there's a great deal of detail over here in terms of what could or could not be changed in this, and we've made other modifications. The motion is to have this information by December 19th so that we can set a public forum that might or might not result in a conversation about going out to referendum again, and that is not the case. We have been given the mandate by our electors to continue with this project, and bond council indicates we have that latitude regardless of anything, because this wording on the referendum is all that matters, not anything else. But we are indeed not only this Thursday going to have a forum with some critics to explain methodology, but we're also going to invite the public to another forum in January. It is a courtesy that we're doing, and we should do. but it has nothing to do with how we proceed or whether we backtrack. So all I'm saying is the 19th information will be delivered, we hope. We're all going to be working on a business plan, and then we're going to present it to the population for their questions, but the decision has been made, and it is here at the board. We will be forthcoming, but that's the only thing I'm hearing from your motion. Let's get the information ASAP, under the circumstances we have, and let's have a public forum, and that's it. We're not talking about revoking the referendum, and I will be happy to give you this wording from October 27th. And I'm leaving.
I agree with Valerie. I really do. And the other thing I would say is that we have got to focus on the fact that if we don't get this thing out of the barn in terms of a plan that the architects can start working on by the beginning of January, it's going to be awfully hard for them to come up with the plans that are necessary in order to take it to the next steps that have to be done in a timely manner. We have got to fish or cut bait on this project now. And frankly, it would be nice if we could get the business plan in advance. I really don't like the idea of walking into a public forum or meeting to discuss something we haven't really understood well. So I think it should try to come out sooner rather than the forum. But I think we have really, frankly, got to be prepared at our next meeting on the 19th to decide if we're going forward with this or not. Because otherwise, you can't tell Chuck Booz in February or March, you need to get plans ready for June or May. I mean, you can't. It's not going to work. You're killing the project. At that point in time, you've got to decide, am I all in on Ag STEM or do I want to reserve? If you want to reserve, then stop moving forward. But I'm just telling you that at some point in time in the very near future, we're either going to have to fish or cut bait. We're either going to that or we're going to lose the project. And if we decide to put this out to some other referendum or go to another year, it's dead. It's gone. It's finished. You'll be lucky to see any money in the state bonding capacity at that point. And even if they have it, they aren't going to talk to us anymore because at some point you realize that this school district isn't ready to move, and we're not going to hand money to somebody who's not ready to move. So I really think we got to decide, are we in on this? And frankly, I'm in on it. I want to see this project succeed. For this reason, we don't have an alternative. That's the other thing we're not talking about. What is the alternative to Ag STEM if we don't go forward with Ag STEM? We're going to do what? I understand that, but it's part and parcel of this discussion. If we don't go forward on this, we don't have an alternative to the slow disintegration of the school district, in particular Shepaug. So we're going to have to start thinking about that. If you've got an alternative, please talk to people outside the meeting and say, I've got an alternative here for you, because so far I haven't seen one.
Issue's not alternative.
Okay. Where to start?
First
off,
there's a motion on the table to have a business plan at an earlier date. That's
Yeah.
the motion.
understand. The letter from bond counsel was to ask a specific questions of within the existing referendum, do I have the authority to make the changes that that need to be made to go forward? And that's a specific answer to a specific question. Taking that and saying, and therefore, we don't need to go to referendum under any other circumstance, I think is a question that we haven't discussed as a group. So I'd like to go back to council, get an answer to the question that I'm curious about as opposed to the question that was asked. Second, Castle Booze, I'm looking at the schedule provided by Bob today. It's looking like, Charlie can, if we decided tonight to give Charlie another $100,000, that gets him through March. So saying that we're going to turn into pumpkins if we don't make a decision by tomorrow night to green light the entire program, in the absence of opinions, et cetera, I also think is unnecessary pressure. We can vote tonight to give Charlie another $100,000 and let him keep going, and he'll stay in front. It's not $1 million contract or a blank check, but it keeps him going. And then in March, if we still haven't collectively made up my mind, we can give him another $100,000, and that gets him to May. And pretty soon another $50,000 gets him to whether or not the state's going to vote this project in. So, we should be very careful, well, not careful, but measured about how much money we just kind of authorize, even from the optics of it, because Charlie can only spend it as fast as Charlie needs to spend it. So I don't think anybody's suggesting that we ought to handicap the program and put it at risk because we're still having internal discussions about to go to referendum, not to go to referendum. Do we have a business case? Is it complete? I think we can parallel process these things and not, create any, we're under enough pressure. We don't need to create artificial pressure.
Valerie. I'm sorry. Hold, Valerie, please. I'm sorry. Rebecca?
I just wanted to get back to the original item that came forward. And while I understand why Alan wanted to get this to the 19th, and I think that his concerns are valid, with the new information that Dr. Cosentino has shared with us tonight regarding the ongoing conversations with the state, I know that she and Bob and everybody, they're going to get it to us as quickly as they can, and I'm not sure that the 19th is plausible. And speaking of creating undue pressure, I don't want to create undue pressure for the administration with this new information in mind. So I know you'll get it to us as quickly as you can. Normally I would support it, but I think that we need to give them a little bit of slack here.
Valerie?
I'd just like to vote before I leave.
All right, well, whether the motion passes or fails, Dr. Costantino, can you tell us what your intentions are?
Yes, we are, as Bob said, we're working on the expenses, the bonding, the staffing. Michelle and Kim, hopefully we'll have that this week. We are hopefully going to have, after conversations with the state, a number that they're happier with, because until we have that, we can't really have a business plan. If we are not ready on the 19th, we're going to try, but if we're not ready on the 19th, we will get the information to you over the break, and then we will have a meeting probably January 3rd or January 4th. We'll have a special meeting so we can really digest the numbers. And then on the 9th, we have a board meeting, and then the 10th, we have the public meeting. The one thing I will say about the public meeting is that I am hesitant about sending numbers out to the public before the meeting, because we do have people who takes that information and puts their own little lens of information. So I would rather not do that and just present it that night and then have a follow-up if they have other questions like we're doing. But, maybe they want to come that night, an hour before it'll be available. But I really have a problem just sending it out beforehand because it becomes difficult for us.
Peter?
I move the question. Whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I forgot already. You don't want me to move the...
I'm really thinking.
No, okay.
All right, well,
No, I take it back. Okay, you want to...
Nice job, Valerie, but I was ready to withdraw the motion so you wouldn't have to do that, but now we have to vote on your second, so... And we have to move the question, which means we have to vote on something I was about to withdraw, so... Thank you.
Well, I'll
Kim.
remove my motion to move the motion.
I'm saying, based on what Dr. Costantino just said, I totally understand, and I feel that my point has been made that, with all due haste, but without, I didn't know anything about this DAS stuff, these latest questions, obviously, which makes things worse. And I forgot that Bob was working on the audit. So that's certainly fine. I think that having this before, as you said, the week before, so we can talk about it in our next meeting. And I just want to, my little 2 cents is, I don't think you should be afraid of numbers being out there, because they are the numbers. Now, if the people will say something regardless, right? They will squawk regardless. But if facts are facts, then they are facts. And if the numbers look bad, then that is part of what we have to deal with. If the numbers look good, then they're big fortresses that these people can't climb. So unfortunately, I'm afraid. I mean, think about it. But I think sometimes when you withhold things, then we get accused of withholding things to the last moment, not sharing. Why don't we just find out about this now? And then you get a lot of blowback from that. And I don't know whether that's worth it all the time. But I appreciate what you're saying. It makes things, in one way, it makes things more difficult. And I think you're right. In another way, it makes things easier.
All right, thank you, Alan. Alan has withdrawn his motion. Who was the second? All right, so it's been withdrawn. That's it. Is
Oh.
there a motion?
No, I want to say something.
Hold on,
Uh,
Jen.
Thank you. It's very important. I'd like to just put this out there. If there's a possibility of getting a delay phone call a little later than 4:41, I would greatly appreciate it because I have been up since 4:41 for the last 2 weeks. So is there a way to maybe make it a little later? And I am being dead serious. 4:45. Very important. 4:41.
No, there are people who
Sorry.
like that early call, and
You're up
you know, because the staff,
You're not.
you know, the staff appreciates it. A lot of the teachers in the high school, you know, they're up.
But I think the parent.
Okay,
I think it's a little early,
okay,
and I've been getting a lot of
okay,
complaints about it. But myself, no, I have not been.
okay. We will make sure not before 5:30. We'll look.
5:30 is great.
5:30 would be way
Great.
better.
I'm just. It's just.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Peter, make the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.